So I figure I would get myself back into kind of a routine of sorts and just do every so often as I see fit little speeches about stuff that I know I need to keep in the back of my mind as part of my repertoire and as part of my landscape of the basis of where I want to come from when I am writing and be very clear on what I'm trying to point out so that way everything stays consistent. So I know I have right now in my book some of my musings or my perspective on what happened earlier on in 2020. And I definitely went into the details of why I thought there was why why I think we have such a, a divide among all different cultures. And when you think about it, humans are very imbalanced right now. When you're dying and reproducing, you are at a deficit with different levels of issues, and that does then color the landscape, literally and figuratively, as far as people's behaviors. And so, what I am proposing, what I am proposing is that at some point, if let's say everybody on this earth, I don't care who you are, from all over the world, they did jelly juice and they were able to move around and adapt. Not so much like over time evolve, and this whole thing with evolution over time when it comes to dying and reproducing, it's a very slow evolution because it takes time when people are dying and reproducing for the mutations in the DNA to be able to adapt to the current environment. And so that's why there is this natural selection. Those that have the inability to adapt at the micro level will not be able to survive a new environment. And those that have the stronger genetics will be able to pass on the adaptation over a period of time. Now, this is something that's very interesting. That really, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. That's the reason why it takes years and years and years of evolution, because people are dying and reproducing, and it does take several generations for a specific, whether it's the skin color, whether it's the shape of the eyes, whether it's whatever, to actually then be part of that person's genetic makeup, and until that person then moves somewhere different and travels to a different place, and then they have so many kids that have to adapt to that environment, and the weakest child doesn't survive, but only the strongest survive. And so what if humans, if everybody's on the jelly juice, was able to do the jelly juice and be able and not really reproduce unless they had it planned, very organized and guided very carefully? What if everyone did the jelly juice, they started living indefinitely, and they were still able to adapt to wherever they moved to without any problems? Okay? Because this is the thing, why do you not see people like, from the southern states move to the northern states and stay there indefinitely? Now, some do, some don't. Like, I said I was from the tropics, like, from Vietnam, and oh my God, living in a cold northern state would not be, it would not be, it just wouldn't be like, I didn't accept that as something as a possibility. And now I'm living in Ohio where it's cold like 6 months out of the year. And I love it. It's cold, but my body's able to adapt. Yes, I am lighter skinned in the winter. And then when I'm out on the boat or hanging out in the sunshine, my skin gets darker. Okay? So why does not happen for everyone else out there? Why do so when somebody that's from like South Africa or lives in South Africa, and there is a population of people who are lighter skinned in South Africa, why don't they assimilate and become darker skinned like everyone around? Why aren't people assimilating when they live in the same region? So yes, so you have people from Europe moving to places like Africa or moving to places like near the equator, but they still keep the same genetics. Why is that? Because they're dying and reproducing. No one has been able to actually adapt to the current environment. And some of these people have been living in these different regions for centuries. When you think about it, I mean, when did the Europeans first, move into Africa? And and when you do move into a place, why don't you assimilate like at the biochemical level? Why is there still a very distinction between the melanin levels in people's bodies? Because the people have the inability to adapt literally at the micro level. And then, of course, they're dying and they're reproducing, passing along the same genetics, the inability to adapt. Maybe you might see some changes over time, but not really. Actually, if anything, there are more um, deficiencies that are compounded through every single meiosis, through every single reproduction, through every single generation. So, I'm going to be introducing that into my book as well. And I do have a post on my Facebook that somebody posted in a different context. Why is it that people are always fighting with each other and the only real difference is just the amount of melanin in people's skin? But I'm going to go deeper and say, hey, when people have the inability to really adapt to their environment, imbalances, bad behavior, a lot of different things happen. And that's not just one culture or another culture, it's everybody. Okay? And I'm not saying melanin always is the root cause. That's definitely a factor. There's definitely other hormones involved of why we have so much instability in our society. But that is something to think about. That, people that live in South Africa that are from Europe, if they were very well balanced, they should be able to assimilate to the indigenous population. So we have these separations of indigenous to, expats to this and that. That's because people aren't adapting. And so they set themselves apart, and that's where the manufactured differences are because, yes, I mean, people are, it's not that their intention is not to assimilate, it's just that the fact that they don't understand at the biochemical level how to. And of course, we keep reproducing and dying, and so no one's really correcting the anomalies in the genetic makeup. And so this is why we have so much diversity. Not saying diversity is bad, no, it's not. But it would explain why there is so much instability and why there has to be these different resets because of so much imbalances in the population. And one of the obvious things is the inability to actually assimilate at the biochemical level to different geographical locations if you're from someplace else. Now, I don't want to politicize it. So here's the thing: is politicizing melanin has become a huge thing, and people use it as a tool for whatever. And I don't want that to be used as a tool. Using your genetic makeup as a leverage point. What's the point? Why? Why set yourself apart? Why do you have to be different? Why do you have to feel special? Why can't we all just kind of assimilate to each other? And this is where people can get along with each other, because there really isn't somebody saying, well, I'm this way, so I should be treated this way, and you have to, revere me or something, right? And that goes both ways. Okay, so I'm trying to be very careful in how I explain this without um, being offensive. But I want everyone all over the world to live and not have to deal with deficiencies, not have to deal with imbalances, cancer, disease, chronic illness. And cancer really is just the body holding on to agonist antibodies, causing more growth in some areas, and the person is also suppressing evolution in other areas. And this is why you have such a fast moving cellular regeneration that are condensed in some areas that do usurp the energy. Okay, and then you have these, then you have other antibodies that do a search and destroy, so to destroy evolution, so you don't really evolve. And that comes from hormonal imbalances. Okay, it comes from the imbalances in the microbiome that cause infection that still influences hormonal imbalances. And this is why right now the COVID-19 is impacting certain communities more than other communities. But there is definitely, an underlying reason. Yes, predispositions, imbalances, and so many other things. So this is something just to think about, okay? Because all cancer disease and chronic illness, and why people are not surviving the COVID or more tolerant of the COVID than others, is because of the predispositions and the imbalances in the microbiome causing infection, and not knowing how to react to the symptoms. And then you are further suppressing your evolution, which is causing a person to accelerate entropy, which then they won't be able to survive any new virus in the environment, because that virus is an evolutionary thing. I mean, someone on my Facebook was mentioning that we have like trillions and trillions of viruses. Of course we do. All we have so many this is what makes up our body, our DNA. It's the data that gives us life. But it's not just the viruses. The viruses, the parasites, the protozoa, the proteins, the fungus, and the bacteria all have to be balanced. That's the microbiome. Then you have the biochemistry, the fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals. And all of that has to be balanced simultaneously. And it fluctuates. And then you have indicators say, okay, when you eat a food, not say the food's poison, but sometimes you have already enough of the vitamin D hormone. So when you drink milk or eat something that's milk, you might have mucus. So you get rid of the mucus. That's the excess vitamin D that may have had antibodies in there to get rid of, whatever, any excess. And so you release the excess. But people are like, not getting rid of the mucus, or not wanting to poop. They're not really wanting to pee at the right time. They don't want to sweat, and they're keeping all the excess in there. And then that's when people have then agonist antibodies that then cause cancer, or they have so many antibodies that are causing imbalances in their hormones and clogging up their arteries and capillaries. And then, yes, people will die from lack of oxygen to the brain as well as to the heart or to the lungs. And then people die from preventable diseases. So this is just something to think about. Everything is connected. You have one imbalance here, it's a chain reaction throughout the whole body. But remember, the holistic allopathic world, they compartmentalize everything and treat everything as separate. And then when you go get something tweaked, you don't realize that that tweak will now cause a chain reaction in everything else. And then you're on a string of drugs to try to keep you balanced. You're on a string of supplements. You're on a string of remedies. You have a string of issues that are compounding. And then you have a baby, and that baby has inherited all of that. And they don't really stand a chance. They'll have a good life for a certain amount of time, and then they will start seeing their predispositions that was inherited. What if it didn't have to be that way? Something to think about. All right. Good luck to all of you. Bye.